SHTF prepping in an apartment definitely presents you with some challenges, like having limited space or being around a lot of people. So I figured I would try to help out by putting together a list of 10 prepping items that anyone in an apartment could use during SHTF. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and I'm talking about 10 items that I think could be useful for any preppers who live in an apartment. Obviously, there's some challenges there that are difficult to overcome, and these items might help you deal with those if you find yourself in a crisis scenario. And if you're worried about crisis scenarios while living in an apartment, then hit the subscribe button below, because these are the conversations I try to have here on the channel. Now, food is important, but what's more important is water. And you gotta have water to survive, at least if you wanna make it past 3 days. So the first prep on this list is gonna be a water bob. A water bob is basically a 100-gallon bladder that fills your bathtub up during an emergency. You fill the water bob up, it sits in your bathtub, and now you have 100 gallons on hand. And they run $35. So, I think they're a great thing to have in an apartment because of your limited space. Where else are you going to find somewhere to put 100 gallons of water? Now, the only downside to the water bob is that you got to have a warning ahead of time to fill it up. And sometimes you might not get that warning. Maybe an EMP happens, the pumps shut off, and you no longer have water coming out of the sink, and there's no way to really get that water bob up and running. So, in that scenario, the second prep on this list is going to be Saratoga Farm's 5-gallon stackable water storage. And if you get the 20-gallon kit, it's $120. And that comes with water purification or water treatment, at least, in order to make the water stay stable during a long-term storage situation. And you get the spigots and everything else you need in order to use that water after the fact. Now, what I like about the Saratoga Farm stackable water storage units over something like the water bricks is that the lids or the caps actually go vertically upward instead of being horizontally on the side of the water bricks like they are, which means if there is a leak, they're more likely to actually leak out. Whereas with the Saratoga Farm stackable water storage containers, since the lid's at the top, even if there's a leak, it's not gonna just pour out because gravity is actually working in your favor in that situation. So I do like that, and I think that's a great option in order to have water on hand. So you have the water bob, which gives you 100 gallons if you have at least the time to fill it up, and then you have the Saratoga Farms 5-gallon stackable water storage in order to make sure you have some water on hand in case that water bob doesn't work out, right? So that's my suggestions when it comes to water, especially being in a small space like an apartment. Now, next would come food, because you still want to have food, you still want to be able to eat, you got to keep your energy up, and you don't know how long you might be trapped in your apartment. And here's the thing, you might not be able to escape or leave right away, maybe it's too dangerous outside, or who knows what, so food could be very important. Now, one thing I think is pretty cool that everybody could probably use, even if you're not in an apartment, is the FIFO can tracker. And what that is a first in, first out can organizer that holds 54 cans and makes sure that while you're rotating your cans through your rotational pantry, you eat the ones that are the oldest first, okay? And I do like that, and it fits cans from 4 ounces all the way up to 15 ounces, and it's $50, all right? So it's a little expensive, but once you have it, it'll save you some space, and it'll ensure that you're eating the oldest cans first all of the time, which is a big deal for keeping that rotational pantry up and running. And canned food is probably one of the easiest ways to have food on hand in an apartment because you don't have to cook it, it has good nutritional value, has a lot of other things that it brings to the table as well, and I think that would be something that would help you keep that rotational pantry up and running. It keeps it organized, you can easily see it, and you always eat the oldest stuff first. So I do like the FIFO can tracker for that, and then the other thing I would consider in an apartment, just because you're limited on space, is the survival / long-term storage emergency food options, just because they're a no-brainer in the sense of all you have to do is add water and now you have meals. You don't necessarily need to think about how I'm gonna cook all this rice or all these beans or all this stuff and how I'm gonna store it all. They store pretty well because the food is generally freeze-dried, which means it's compacted and lightweight and fits in a small space, and they have a lot of nutritional value, okay? So for example, you can get an Augustin Farms 30-day emergency food supply for $135 from Midway USA, who is the biggest supporter of this channel. So I do want to say a big thanks to Midway USA, and they do have a lot of long-term survival style emergency food that you can get from them, and right now they're doing some crazy sales. So make sure you check that out. But here's the thing, there's a lot of different configurations when it comes to this emergency food that you should be aware of, okay? So the emergency food is the fourth thing on this list, all right? And the Augustin Farms 30-day emergency food supply, like I said, is $135, and it has 307 servings, which gives you 1,854 calories a day. Now, if you were to go on Amazon and look for the same thing, you'll be greeted by the 30-day Augustin Farms Deluxe Emergency Food Supply, which they both say 30 days, so they sound like they're the same thing, but the Amazon one is less expensive. So why? Well, because it only has 200 servings and it only equates to about 1,200 calories per day. So you do get what you pay for, and it's easy to look at the days listed on these emergency food supplies and get confused because this one says 30, this one says 30, but this one's $40 cheaper, so why wouldn't I go that route, right? So make sure you really look at the stats and understand how much these things cost for how many calories and how many servings you're actually getting for these food supplies. And the other thing that you could actually do if you were interested in, I'll put links down below to all this stuff so you guys can check that out and go see for yourself if it might work for you, is Valley Food Storage, who's an affiliate of the channel, offers something called the Build Over Time program. Now, they do a 30-day emergency food supply, and it eventually costs you $966. So that's really expensive compared to all these other options we just discussed. But they let you build it out month by month, so over 3 months they let you pay for it, which means by the end of 3 months you have a 30-day food supply. But the difference there is that you're getting 525 servings of food that equates to 2,360 calories per day. So make sure you do the math and check out exactly what all these different emergency food supplies are actually offering when it comes to the individual amount of calories per day and the amount of servings per day and everything else that they're offering, because that's where a lot of these cost differences actually come into play. Either way, the fourth thing on this list was the emergency food supply, because in an apartment, it does make a lot of sense, even though it's a lot more expensive than some of the more traditional routes of storing things like rice and beans. Now, after food, you got to figure out how you're going to survive this SHTF scenario that we're all discussing during these conversations, right? And so the fifth thing on this list is going to be a first alert 2-story fire escape ladder. We're going to talk about escape because in many ways, you might need to get out of an apartment as well. Might not need the food or the water because it might get dangerous very quickly. I mean, you're surrounded by a lot of people who are likely unprepared. Who knows, maybe the building catches fire or something dangerous is going on that you just have to leave, and oh well, you have to leave these preps behind, but good thing you were able to leave because sometimes you don't have the option. Maybe you're on the second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor. Maybe there's not a good way to get out without putting yourself in extreme danger. Who knows? So have some options. So that's why the fifth thing is that first alert 2-story fire escape ladder, which is $53. It's 14 feet long. It'll hold up to 375 pounds and it folds up and stores really easily. Now that one actually hooks onto your windowsill. Anyone between 6 and 10 inches wide it will work with, and that will get you down from the second floor to the first. And then you would have to do your research and see what other options there are depending on what floor you're on, because they do make fire escape ladders that are very similar to that one for the third floor, the fourth floor, and who knows how high they actually go. But that's something you'll have to figure out on your own because I'm just presenting you with this idea as a concept. But if you're on the second floor, you should definitely have a way to get down without hurting yourself, and one of these fire escape ladders can definitely do that for you. And it doesn't matter if it's a fire that's causing you to have to leave. Maybe people are acting crazy on the other side of your door and you just want to leave in a way that doesn't have to make you go out the main hallway or whatever that is. Well, this gives you that option. So escaping might be a big deal. Now, the sixth item on this list is another way to escape and also get into places you might need to get into that allow you to leave from a different direction or a route, let's just say. So the sixth thing on this list is also one of the most expensive things on the list, which is the Estwing Breaching Ram Tool. It's 36 inches long, it's all forged steel, and it's $420 because it's a legitimate breaching tool. And what this does is it allows you to get into doors or break through padlocks or chains or whatever you might need to do to escape. Because maybe you need to get through a roof hatch that you can't access otherwise, or maybe you need to get through some kind of service door that has a lock on it. Who knows? But have a way to get out. And honestly, I'm just gonna throw this out there, this thing has a wedge pry end for doors and a fork pry end for like chains and locks. It has a hammer on it as well. And I'm pretty sure it could easily get you through some drywall if that's just the route you had to take even as well. So keep that in mind because you might have to get out. And this thing will definitely get in or out of a lot of places. And you should probably have something similar to it in your toolbox if you're living in an apartment. Just because there's so many exits and entrances and there's so many doors and different security measures, you might not know what you're gonna run into and what you might have to defeat in order to leave, okay? Now, here's a big one that a lot of people don't think about as much as they probably need to, which is waste, specifically like human waste. Because if you're trapped in an apartment and you can't leave because it's too dangerous, but maybe the water's not working, so luckily you have your water storage already figured out with your water bob and your, stackable water storage containers. Well, what about going to the bathroom? Because you're not going to want to waste that water to keep flushing your toilet, right? Well, there's a good solution here, and that is to get a portable toilet. Now, you can get a decent portable toilet for like 27 bucks, which honestly costs the same as some of the 5-gallon bucket adapters, which is just a toilet seat that's converted from a 5-gallon bucket lid. Either way, for 27 bucks, you get a portable toilet that you can just set up in your bathroom, and then you can line it with a bag to collect your waste, which might be the way to do it. And the one that I'm using as an example for this video, like I said, it's 27 bucks. It folds up really small and it comes with some of the bags already. And of course, I would suggest getting more of those bags so that you can deal with whatever amount of time you might have to deal with that waste for, okay? So this allows you to go to the bathroom into a bag, right? And keep that a little bit more organized when it comes to the actual waste aspect of it. So that's why the 7th thing on this list is a portable toilet. You don't know how long you're gonna be trapped in there and your toilets might not be working. And if you just go to the bathroom in your toilets, but you can't flush them, well, you're gonna create some kind of a biohazard in your bathroom that could get the rest of your family and yourself sick very quickly. So I definitely don't suggest doing that. Now, the next thing on this list, or number 8, let's just call it, because who's counting anyway, is gonna be Poo Gel. What? Yeah, well, here's the thing. Poo Gel, all it does is basically coagulate liquids and remove odor. And so what's nice about that is that you add that to your bag that you're having to use in order to get rid of your human waste. And what that does is that it keeps it a little bit more solidified while also trapping in some of the odor, which means that you can make it a little bit longer before having to dispose of everything. And it makes that disposal process a little bit easier without making a mess. AKA if there's a hole in the bag or it tears or something like that, you're not gonna just start dragging, urine or feces all over your apartment, which is very small and now has all that stuff all over it, which creates a secondary issue. So this stuff is only like 12 bucks. And what it does is it at least just makes that whole situation a little bit more, let's just say, able to be stomached, which is an interesting way to put it based on what we're talking about here. So Poo Gel, definitely on the list because it could help make that whole situation last a little bit longer and help dealing with that odor and the mess cleanup itself a little bit easier for you during that time, okay? Now, the last thing we're gonna talk about, at least for this list, is gonna be security. Because like I said, you're around a lot of people in an apartment complex, most of whom are probably unprepared. And security is gonna be a big deal because people might be trying to get in, thinking you might have supplies, people might be trying to hurt you or do harm or who knows what, right? So if you're gonna have to stay in your apartment because things are too dangerous outside, well, you definitely don't want those dangers to make their way inside, right? So the first thing on this part of the list, which is now number 9, which I don't do words or numbers apparently, is gonna be a master lock compact door stopper. And they're $27, and basically they're folding, and they set up right on your floor, and they lean up against your door, and they make it so it's a lot harder to open than it was before, okay? They're adjustable, so they'll fit most doors, and you could even use them in the sliding rack section of a sliding door in order to keep that from being open. So maybe you have a patio with a balcony and you have a sliding glass door there. This will help keep that closed, in case somebody tries to get in that route. And if you have your standard front door that you're worried about somebody breaking in, you don't have to do that thing from the movies where everybody piles couches and refrigerators and everything against the door. You can just set this up. It's purpose built, so it's easy to use, no tools required, and now your door is much more difficult to open from the outside. And that could be a big deal, especially if you have a family that you're worried about protecting, and you want to make sure that nobody with malicious intent makes their way inside your home or, well, your apartment. This would be a good investment for that reason, okay? Now, of course, if they can't get in through the door and your patio sliding glass door is not able to be opened traditionally, how else will they try to get in? Well, that's why number 10 on this list, because we did make it to 10, and even if I didn't count right, now you know we're there, is going to be window film, security window film. And the example I'm using for this is gonna be 8 mil clear security window film, which runs $29 based on size, right? So depending on how much you're trying to use and how many windows you're trying to protect, it's gonna cost more or less depending on your situation, I guess. But either way, what this does is it prevents the immediate breakage of the glass. It doesn't necessarily prevent them from getting in through that glass, but it won't be as easy to get in as it was before. Before, they could take a crowbar and just hit your glass window and come right in. Now they might have to hit it 1, 2, 3, who knows how many times, alerting you to the activity sooner, giving you more time to react, and in some cases, maybe they'll decide it's too much of a hassle and just leave anyway. But this is a good thing to have that a lot of people use in hurricane country because it allows not only the glass to stay stronger and withstand brunt force for a longer period of time. But even if the glass does finally fail, it doesn't shatter all over the place like it would usually. It falls apart more similarly to, the way they try to treat windshields and things like that in vehicles, where they don't want it to shatter because that's dangerous, right? So this stuff prevents that from happening, which means you limit your risk of injury if the glass were to fail anyway at some point. So that stuff is just good to have anyway, based on Mother Nature, right, and natural disasters. But for the security aspect, what it does is it keeps your windows a little bit stronger against somebody trying to enter through them in a way other than just opening them, okay? Which opening them is actually different than opening them, just so you're aware. Google it, all right. But this is something that I put together because I thought there's a lot of preppers out there who live in an apartment and they have the basics figured out. They know what they need, right? When it comes to having backup power, when it comes to having food and water, but maybe they don't know that there's some of these solutions out there that could help those things become a little bit easier to acquire or accomplish based on the task at hand. Yeah, you could get other tools that can do similar jobs, but are they as affordable or are they as efficient? I'm not necessarily sure, to be honest with you, but I thought this might just help somebody out. Even if one of the items on this list helped you out, then good. I think we did some positivity here, right? Let me know in the comments below if you have things to add, because I think that's always useful and helpful for the community to help each other out and to kind of put some other information out there based on personal experience. And let me know if there's things on this list that you think aren't a good idea, because maybe I'm wrong, and that's fine too, and we can all learn from that as well. But I just wanted to kind of mention that these things could help somebody in an apartment. And I don't live in an apartment, but I have before. And I definitely understand some of the issues with living in an apartment when it comes to dealing with an emergency crisis. And if we learned anything from 2020, you might be locked in that apartment for quite some time, especially if you're in certain parts of the world. So, anything else you need from me, go to magicprepper.com. You can also go to my Subscribe Star for $5 a month if you want exclusive content and things of that nature. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.